Well, we're here again, huh? Top 10 worst SpongeBob episodes, and this is the sequel. Sequel to my first ever YouTube video. This is gonna be a list or something. You see, I really wanted to do this list to mention a couple episodes that I know people would want me to talk about because of how awful they are. And trust me, there are a lot of episodes I wanted to put on my original list that didn't make the cut. So, we're gonna just start the list. So, if in case you don't know what this is, it's basically part 2. It's basically 20 to 11. It's similar to my best SpongeBob list, part 2. So yeah, it's basically that. So, it's 20 through 11 instead of 10 through 1. So, we're going to be going through a couple for episodes that just couldn't make the cut last time but could absolutely make the cut here. So, count this as if you combine this and my other video, it could be a top 20 list essentially. With all that out of the way, though, let us begin. For number 10, Rodeo Days. This episode is just bland. This is not even the worst Sandy episode on this list. We'll get to that. But this one was not fun to watch. It was not enjoyable. There were no good jokes. The cows were dumb. The song was bad. Nothing about this episode was good. It was just boring. I didn't like it. It's also a bit mean to SpongeBob and Patrick. And speaking of SpongeBob and Patrick, they're annoying, especially SpongeBob because he's just panicking over a rodeo. And also, some of the people are kind of cruel. Like, didn't you think Patrick would want to help? Like, doesn't he care about SpongeBob? I mean, Sandy's well-being. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I don't get anything in this episode. This episode is just nonsense. It's basically the biggest issue with the latest seasons, but in season 7. So on top of that, there's character assassination. Speaking of which, yeah, Sandy's assassinated, SpongeBob's assassinated. And a lot of the other Bikini Bottomites who are originally nice are also assassinated. Overall, this episode is not fun to watch. I would not recommend anyone watch it. Please don't watch it. This is easily one of the worst season 7 episodes. Let's move on now. So number 9, Waiting. Oh great. Okay, this is probably the most boring on this list. Okay, scratch that. Second most. There's a certain episode I'll get to, but this episode is so boring. There are very few scene changes, and nothing happens throughout most of the episode. It's just not fun to watch. The only redeeming factor is that this isn't 11 minutes. Oh, 11 minutes. Whew. Imagine this was 11 minutes. I would have actually quit. This would probably be worse than, like, SpongeBob You're Fired. At least that episode had scene changes, basic things we need in a show. This episode also just straight up is so bad. Like, why? It just doesn't make sense. SpongeBob and Patrick are annoying in this episode. This is easily one of the worst, if not maybe the worst, season 5 episode. And I'll talk about one certain episode that probably should have made this list, but didn't quite make it. But I'll talk about that later. Let's just move on now, please. I hate this episode. For number 8, we have All That Glitters. Woo! Okay. This episode is quite infamous for a lot of reasons. And it makes me sad because this is from a good season. This is from season 4. And I actually like season 4. Believe it or not, I think it's a good season. I love season 4. There are a lot of classics there, like Have You Seen the Snail? There is Plankton versus Mr. Krabs. And there's Fear of a Krabby Patty. There's Skill Crane, etc. But jeez, this episode was awful. SpongeBob is annoying. He's incredibly annoying. He just cries and cries and cries and never shuts up. It's on par with SpongeBob You're Fired as one of the most boring and loud and annoying episodes of SpongeBob. It's just not fun to watch. I did not find anything of worth. Of course, anything really anyone said about this episode is true, but SpongeBob. I will agree though that the naked joke throughout the other half, I actually find it to be kind of funny. It's just a funny gag. I don't know, something funny about it. I don't get why. My instincts are stupid. I don't get it. I really don't get why I think that joke is funny. But I don't know. Maybe there's something about the freshness, I guess. Let's just move on now. Number 7, Squirrel Jelly. This is what I was referring to when I said worst Sandy episode. This episode is mean-spirited, boring, nothing really happens. So the plot is essentially Sandy is too competitive and she beats everybody in games and stuff, and then she straight up is mean to SpongeBob and Patrick. This is just character assassination for Sandy. Also Sandy is the cause of the problem, and I do kind of appreciate she solves the problem, but she is forced to. She doesn't do it by her own will. I just don't get it. And she does exactly what she did to cause it. It's just so boring. There is nothing to enjoy. I was just annoyed and irritated at this episode for Sandy. SpongeBob and Patrick are a bit better, but they're not as good as they are in something else. I don't know. But jeez, this episode is just not funny at all. There's nothing to be found here that is good. Can we move on now? I did not like this episode. Number 6, Summer Job. In my initial drafts, this was going to be tied with a certain other episode for number 3, which that episode was still there. But, well, I found a couple episodes, like Squirrel Jelly, that made the list. Instead, let's talk about this one now. This one is actual trash. Yep, trash. What is there to like here? It's just Mrs. Puff gets tortured for 11 minutes. You know that dumb blackmail trope that's done in cartoons? Yeah, well, we did this. And don't worry, they had to make a sequel. Yep, they actually made another episode like this in, season 8. But that's not the topic. I might talk about that sometime, though. Don't watch that one, please. I forgot what it was called, but anyway. Gosh, this episode is just straight up not good at all. There's nothing fun about it. There's nothing even remotely decent about it. And by the way, that second blackmail episode was called Accidents Will Happen in season 8. But, gosh, SpongeBob is annoying. Oh my gosh, is he annoying. SpongeBob never shuts up. I get it. It's a good idea. I'll admit. It's a good idea. Role reversal episodes are great. Heck, there's a certain season 2 episode that is heavily talked about. Or sorry, season 3 episode that's heavily talked about when referring to one of the worst SpongeBob episodes in history. So yeah, anyway. And that one was reversal. They know how to make good episodes. Oh wait, this is the season 7 writers. Right. Okay, anyway, sorry. Let's just move on from that point. Mrs. Puff, it did almost nothing to deserve it. Yeah, I get it. She crashed into the Krusty Krab, so she needs to pay it off. This is just cruel, and it character assassinates both Krabs and SpongeBob in horrific ways. SpongeBob, as usual, becomes an annoying piece of crap, and Mr. Krabs is a cruel husband here, because he literally blackmails his girlfriend into working for free as a slave at the Krusty Krab. How? Mrs. Puff, go find yourself a better man. Anyway. Yeah, overall, this episode is mean-spirited, not funny at all, there's nothing good about it. Why, though? And this episode had such a good concept, like I said before. Role reversals are awesome. I love role reversals. Aldi's Always Greener, for example, the episode I was talking about in season 3, is really good. It's actually might make the top 30 if I ever make a part 3. I might, actually. There's a lot of smart episodes I want to talk about. But yeah, I really like that episode. This episode is basically Algae's Always Greener, but if it was on a 2-cent budget. I just can't stand it. Let's just move on before I explode. Number 5. Smooth Jazz at Bikini Bottom. This episode, I actually saw 2 people call this the worst episode of SpongeBob of all time. Actually. I mean, I can't really blame them, though. Because from the get-go, from the start, I just couldn't stand it. It's not funny at all. Oh my gosh, the comedy is boring. The comedy is probably the worst part of this episode. The plot is that SpongeBob and Squidward gets 2 tickets to go to a concert that he gets to go to. And Patrick eats them. Sorry. He gets one. Sorry, I messed it up. Squidward gets one ticket, and then Patrick eats it because funny. Isn't Patrick eating hilarious? Isn't funny comedy with a K? Comedy, funny, ha ha ha, ha ha, comedy. But anyway, so SpongeBob luckily wins another one and takes Squidward with him, which is kind of him. But then at the concert, we see Patrick there. For some reason, how'd you get in without a ticket? I know people have called that out, but like, how'd you get in without a ticket or money or anything? You don't have money. You never do. You work in a rock all day. You sit in a rock and watch TV and watch people get hit in the head with coconuts. Oh my gosh. But anyway, sorry. Let me move on to the review. So, then Patrick literally eats the other tickets. Yay, comedy. It's so funny. It's so stupid. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. It's not funny at all. There's no comedy to be found here. Then, because it's a Squidward torture episode, the rest of the episode is spent on Squidward trying to meet his idol. He got like a ticket. I think the ticket was actually to meet his idol backstage, not to go to the concert. But anyway, sorry, I might have messed that up. I have a very vague memory because this episode is so forgettable. This episode, I mean, SpongeBob, I'll admit, was good here. I'll admit, this is probably one of his better appearances in season 7. Because he wasn't mean or, like, too idiotic on, like, a certain SpongeBob episode involving Gary from this season. Where he gets a pal. You all know what I'm talking about, right? But anyway, yeah, overall, I can't stand this. Please don't watch this, whatever you do. Number 4. Woo! I'm gonna die. Squid Baby. This episode is straight up just I don't get why this episode exists or what it was made for. It's not funny at all. It's just, I don't know what to say. It just makes me feel gross on the inside. I mean, I get it. I know I've experienced worse than this. You know, Family Guy list, Fresh Air. Yeah, that was way worse than this. And, gosh, that episode was awful. But anyway, this episode is just awful. I don't understand how... I don't get it. I don't get how this episode's allowed to air. This just feels gross. I don't really know how to describe it. It's hard to describe it because it's just that weird, not fun. It has nothing redeeming. No good jokes. No nothing. Nothing at all. It's just... I don't get it. It feels like it was fetish and nothing else. Please, let's move on. Okay, number 3. Oh, Penny Foolish. This was the episode I was referring to whenever I said maybe the second most boring episode of SpongeBob. But then SpongeBob Your Fryer came along and said, nope. Anyway, so this episode is about Mr. Krabs seeing SpongeBob pick up a penny-looking object off the ground at a shop. And then Mr. Krabs tries to go get it. One, that is just straight up dumb. And he ends up spending more money on that penny than he gets. It's basic business, boy. Don't spend more than you earn. It's basic budget and profit. I've learned about it. Come on, dude. It's 7th grade business. It's probably 6th grade business. It's so simple, dude. It's a Cool Math Games thing. Come on. It's on Cool Math Games. Sorry. Anyway. But this episode also is just straight up dumb. And also, it relies on coincidence and contrivance, as it just so happened that Mr. Krabs was there at the exact right time, at the exact right place, where SpongeBob would pick that up at the exact time. And by the way, can we talk about the fact that Mr. Krabs has a vision where SpongeBob picks up the penny after he picks up the penny with no edits at all? Come on, it doesn't make sense. Like, why not add something to Mr. Krabs' thought bubble? Maybe make it funny. Maybe do something with it or something. I don't know. They could have done anything, honestly. Like, maybe the gag could have been Mr. Krabs tries to think, and it's as he's about to pick it up, Mr. Krabs tries to take it, and then the cloud disappears. Kind of like pre-movie series episodes. That would, 1, make a good joke, and 2, would have wasted my freaking time. Then we get a bunch of dumb shenanigans. So Mr. Krabs tries to get the penny. Again, trying to make business profit stuff, which I already discussed. But then we get to the final part of the episode, easily the worst part. And that is the plot twist involving SpongeBob's penny. See, SpongeBob's penny isn't a penny. It's just brown-looking object. I forgot what it was. Because this episode's so forgettable. It's just too boring. It's not funny either. I do not understand this episode at all. It's just, how does one make an episode this boring? Let's just move on to number 2 now. This episode, before I get into it, I'm actually going to play a little game with you guys. Let's play a game. Why not? I'm going to describe the plot to you and describe some of its jokes and stuff and see if y'all can figure it out. Let's start. So, 1, this episode is from season 9. 2, it involves Squidward. 3, it is a SpongeBob torture episode and a Squidward torture episode. 4, Squidward is mean now and he's rude because the writers don't know how to write comeuppance correctly. And the final clue I'm gonna give y'all is that the episode is that it gave us a classic meme involving SpongeBob. I'm gonna give y'all 10 seconds to go to the comments and guess. Okay, maybe I made it too long. Okay, whatever. We're done. Okay, so the episode was Little Yellow Book. Yep, I despise this episode. Yes, I know there's the gag with SpongeBob turning into the chicken, and I will admit that's funny, but I wouldn't really say other than that, the episode ain't funny at all. Like, this is actually the only episode on this list that actually got a laugh out of me besides an honorable mention. But, this episode is just not good. It's mean-spirited. It's a SpongeBob Squidward torture episode. It's not interesting. There's no good plot. No good characters. Honestly, the world has complained about this episode, though, so I don't really need to go into detail because everybody else has already talked about this episode. And honestly, same goes for number 1, which if you're aware of a certain episode paired up with a great episode that could make a top 30 list, best list, you probably already know what it is. But let's get to the dishonorable mentions. First up, we have I'm with Stupid. This is easily the worst pre-movie episode of SpongeBob, no doubt. Like, at the beginning, I'll admit, the beginning is great. It has a really good jokes, it's funny, and also has a good plot setup. It has an idea, and I do kind of like the plot. It's a good concept, but it's ruined because Patrick's annoying. And this just paired up with an amazing episode I kind of associate with pre-movie because it was one of the first ones I watched. That being Procrastination. A really good, relatable episode that was really funny and knew what it was doing. This is one of the most infamous SpongeBob episodes in the world, and I don't really disagree with you. Next up, we have Ink Lemonade. I was so tempted to put this one on the list, because this is easily the worst episode, the second worst episode at season 11, besides Squirrel Jelly. But then I realized, it wasn't really worth it. Just kind of felt like the Splinter and Squidward torture porn. So if you took those 2 episodes and combined them, like if you took Ink, if you took the episode from Fairly Odd Parents with the lemonade stand or whatever it's called, I forgot. I like that episode though. But anyway, Fairly Odd Parents, right? They did this kind of episode but better, and I know people have called that out. This is basically if you took that episode, a Squidward torture episode, and the Splinter, and combined them all into an episode. And this is what you would get. Because it's a Squidward torture episode, and they go to some pretty great extents, even giving me flashbacks to the nightmare that was Squid's visit. But anyway, yeah. Let's move on to the final dishonorable mention. We'll get to number 1. Final one, The Nitwitting. This episode is just gross. Gross. Ugh. I actually think it's grosser than the Splinter. Actually, the Splinter was gross. Don't get me wrong. It was disgusting. I do not disagree with the fandom on that. Not even a little bit. But oh my gosh, this was way grosser. It literally has SpongeBob drinking saliva. Just, ugh, ugh, gross. And it's just generally boring. There's nothing of substance, and this is relatively new from 5 years ago. I just can't stand it. But anyway, number one. Bet y'all can guess it. There, I'll give you a couple seconds to do that. Got it? Stuck in the Ringer, my favorite. I love Stuck in the Ringer. Yeah. Okay, so this episode was really predictable to be on the list, but it's straight up boring, mean spirited. There's nothing redeeming about it. The world. I can't say anything about it honestly though. I can't add anything. So I'm just gonna kind of end it here. I know it sounds a bit dumb for me to end it, but what can I say you haven't already heard? Patrick is dumb and ignorant. Oh yeah, the world said that. SpongeBob's this cool SpongeBob episode, torture episode. Yep, everyone said that. Episode's on funny and idiotic. Yep. I can't really add anything, so I know this sounds like a real letdown. I really wish I had anything to add, but I don't. But thank you for tuning in, guys. See ya. Bye.